Good morning. Good morning, everyone. You know, I hope that I clicked all the right buttons this morning. If I could get something like a thumbs up or some other indication that you guys can see me and hear me, that'd be great. Okay, excellent. Got some thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's an interesting thing to be here and talking to the camera, and I'm assuming there's other people on the other side. So welcome, welcome, everybody. We'll wait a few minutes before we begin. Good morning, everybody. Well, I'm saying good morning. It's morning for me, but of course it's not morning for everybody who's listening here. So wherever you are, whatever time it might be, welcome, welcome. For those of you who are just signing on again, I'll say welcome. We'll begin here maybe less than a minute or so. Okay, I think we'll begin now. Again, welcome. It's nice to be practicing with you all here on this side of the camera. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Diana Clark. I teach at the Insight Meditation Center. Usually I'm teaching there on Monday nights. So often I'm teaching in the evenings rather than here in the mornings. And as you can see from the title of the video that I titled this morning, this week I want to do the poetry of practice. And as the days go on this week, I'll unpack that. Like, what are the different ways we might understand that? But I'll begin by saying there's a way in which we can engage with practice that is concerned with technique. Like, should we be mindful of the breath here, right on the upper lip, or should we be mindful of the chest or at the belly? Or there's some way where, like, we're really concerned with technique, or maybe there's a way where practice that we're concerned with the Buddhist lists, like, wow, what was the 17th step of Anapanasati? Or I know there's 10 paramis, but what are all the 10? Or something, there might be this way in which we have this real concern with, am I doing it right? What are the whole lists? And do I have everything, all the information that I need? And that is a valuable way to practice. And that certainly has its place, and it's been a real support for me in my practice. But it's not the only way. And it can be a trap if we think like it is the only way, that we just have to learn all the lists and know all of the techniques and try to get the exact right list or the exact right technique. So I'd like to point to this other way today. This other way that invites another type of knowing, that maybe a type of knowing that encourages an opening of the heart, or maybe a type of coming home, a type of practicing that recognizes something true and pure inside of us, something that feels like really maybe clean and beautiful inside of us, and that allows us to like soften this continually grasping or evaluating or looking for the next moment, this sense of, am I doing this right? And that, of course, is practicing with verse or poetry, letting language touch us in a different way. I don't want to devalue the lists and the techniques. I just want to add or maybe broaden our understanding, our appreciation for the ways that practice can show up. And so rather than just consuming information and trying to adapt to the information that we learn, instead allowing ourselves to be nourished by the words, to be touched and fed by what we hear. And many of you will know there is plenty of verse in the Pali Canon. So this is something that practitioners throughout these millennia have been practicing with verse, and we'll be doing some of that. And today during the guided sit, I'll drop in a verse, a short poem. And then in the short talk afterwards, I'll talk about it and maybe provide some other poems. Okay, so with that as an introduction, let's take a meditation posture. And taking a moment to really settle in, like to sit and know you're sitting. Bringing an aliveness of attention to the experience of sitting. Feeling the sensations of touch with the floor, so the feet touching the floor, or if you're sitting on the floor, the legs. The buttocks, sitting on the chair or the cushion, bench, couch, maybe even the bed. However you are at this moment, whatever posture you're in at this moment. Maybe your back is supported, feeling the pressure, the touch with the back to the back of the chair. Bringing this aliveness of attention, this mindfulness into the body, into the bodily experience. Inhabiting the body with aliveness, with presence. And then setting the sense of direction, the movement we're going, the rest of this meditation period, can you set the intention as one of kindness? Is it possible to have a sense of this moment, holding yourself in care, holding yourself with a kind attitude, in warmth? Putting aside any notions of this being a self-improvement project. And through this meditation period, returning to this orientation of kindness. And then connecting with the anchor, whether that's our breath. For many of us, it will be the breath. And feeling the sensations of breathing in a relaxed, easy way, but not a cavalier way, a way that has some intention or commitment to being with the sensations of the breath or whatever your anchor is. And when the mind wanders, it might be a time to remind ourselves of this orientation towards kindness and just very simply, gently begin again. No need to make stories. Doesn't mean anything about us as meditators. It just means the mind wandered. And then we just come back. Really feeling the sensations of breathing, the beginning, middle, and end of an exhale. And the beginning, middle, and end of an inhale. and the transitions between inhales and exhales. Right now, there's nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. We're just here with the experience of breathing in a simple, uncomplicated way. I'm going to drop in a short poem. You don't need to do anything with this poem. Just allow it to be heard. Maybe it touches something, maybe it doesn't. The poem goes like this. While walking along the river, after a long day meditating on Vulture Peak, I watched an elephant splashing its way out of the water and up the bank. "Hello, my friend," a person waiting there said, scratching the elephant behind its ear. "Did you have a good bath?" The elephant stretched out its leg. The person climbed up, and the two rode off like that, together. Seeing what had once been so wild, now a friend and companion to this good person. I took a seat under the nearest tree and reached out a gentle hand to my own mind. Truly, I thought, this is why I came to the woods. Seeing what had once been so wild, now a friend and companion to this good person. I took a seat under the nearest tree and reached out a gentle hand to my own mind. Truly, I thought, this is why I came to the woods. Good morning, or hello again. So this poem that I read during the guided meditation, maybe it's written by a poet who was inspired by the poems of the Therigatha. Some of you might know the Therigatha are the poems of awakening poems of women from the time of the Buddha. And this poet was inspired by them and reinterpreted them and wrote new poems, which I think are lovely, which I think are really lovely. And maybe I'll just quickly repeat the poem here. While walking along the river, after a long day meditating on Vulture Peak, I watched an elephant splashing its way out of the water and up the bank. Hello, my friend, the person waiting there said, scratching the elephant behind its ear. Did you have a good bath? The elephant stretched out its leg. The person climbed up, and the two rode off like that, together. Seeing what had once been so wild, now a friend and companion to this good person, I took a seat under the nearest tree and reached out a gentle hand to my own mind. Truly, I thought, this is why I came to the woods. So sometimes meditation practice is not befriending our mind, but instead there's a certain type of beating ourselves up or berating ourselves or speaking disparagingly about ourselves, about our practice. And so what would it mean for us to make friends with our minds? What would it mean to soften this inner critic that sometimes shows up with meditation practice? And so this inner critic, we might think of it as something like a sub-personality inside of us, a certain dynamic or constellation of experiences that puts us down, belittles us as this judging, blaming, nagging. And it has this quality of harshness. And it kind of creates this inner climate or this inner environment of harshness. And when this inner critic is up and running, there's this pervasive sense of inadequacy, of not being enough. Whatever I'm doing is not quite right or somehow insufficient. And so when there's the inner critic is really allowed as authoritative or really present, there's a sense of that we just don't accept things. Like, it's not good enough. It's not okay. I don't accept it. You know, whatever our experience is, this shouldn't be happening. And the Four Noble Truths, of course, recognize that the first truth is there is suffering. And then the second noble truth is there's something that's underlying that suffering. And so instead of asking the question, like, what is underlying this? What is supporting this? When the inner critic is really up and running, we often ask, am I doing it right? We might have this feeling that we're not doing it right. So can we, as one way of making friends with the mind, can we change the question? Instead of, am I doing this right? I'm sure I'm not doing this right. Can we change the question to one of, how am I? How am I right now? And this question is very different. It has this question of kindness. Rather than meeting demands, it's a question of care. So when we notice that the inner critic is really up and running, can we make friends with the mind? And one way to do this is to just ask, how am I? How am I in this moment? And so there's another poem that points to this orientation of kindness and friendship with oneself and with one's mind, with what's happening at that moment. This is by the same poet, whom I'll say at the end, but right now we'll just read the poem. The poem goes like this. After 25 years on the path, I had experienced almost everything except peace. When I was young, my mother told me that I would find true happiness only in marriage. And remembering her words all those years later, something in me began to tremble. I gave myself to the trembling, and it showed me all the pain this little heart had ever known, and how countless lives of searching had brought me at last to the present moment, in which I happily married. And can you imagine? We've been living together ever since without a single argument. I love this poem, right? It kind of has this little twist in there that we're not expecting. And the poem starts with, it seems as if this practitioner had difficulty with practice. Practitioner writes, after 25 years on the path, I'd experienced almost everything except peace. Sometimes this is a way in which the inner critic shows up. It's like 25 years, however long, 25 minutes, 20 weeks or whatever, however long we've been practicing. Sometimes we have this feeling like, I should get it by now. I should be having different experiences. I've been having experienced everything, all this terribleness, except peace. There might be some way in which the inner critic shows up, telling us that we should have different experiences than what we're having. And then in this poem, the practitioner allowed herself to tremble. And some of you might know that trembling is kind of like a compassion, is sometimes described as quivering of the heart. So what if this trembling that the practitioner here, this poet is pointing to, is this quivering of the heart, this compassion? And showing the pain that she'd had, like all these years, being met with compassion. And then she marries the present moment. And then she said, can you imagine? Let's see, we've been living together ever since without a single argument. And I kind of like this idea about like marrying the present moment, because there's a way, right, in which there's a commitment, there's a loyalty, but with no guarantees it's always going to be fun and easy. Like we know this. We know this in our relationships with everybody, whether friends, family members, spouses, partners, kids, right? We know this with all of our relationships, that sometimes there's some ease and sometimes there's some difficulties, but we can have this commitment, this loyalty to staying. And here she's staying with the present moment. So what would it mean to stay with the present moment, even though it's not always easy, not always pleasant? And then maybe I'll bring in a third poem written by the same poet. And it goes like this. And it's, of course, the same theme. I was forever getting lost until one day the Buddha told me, to walk this path, you will need 7 friends: mindfulness, curiosity, courage, joy, calm, stillness, and perspective. For many years, these friends and I have traveled together, sometimes wandering in circles, sometimes taking the long way around. There were days when I thought I couldn't go on. There were days when I thought I was finally beaten. It's scary to give all of yourself to just one thing. What if you don't make it? Oh, my heart, you don't have to go it alone. Train yourself to train just a little more gently. Oh, my heart, you don't have to go it alone. Train yourself to train just a little more gently. Some of you might recognize that the list of the 7 friends at the beginning of this poem are the 7 factors of awakening. Here, this poet is interpreting them as mindfulness, curiosity, courage, joy, calm, stillness, and perspective. That's fantastic. Can you imagine if we have these as friends, as companions on our path? And then the poet is adding a few more things to this list, this confidence, or maybe some conviction, or some trust. Maybe some antidotes to doubt. This idea, the poet writes, it's scary to give all of yourself to just one thing. What if you don't make it? And this is something where the inner critic shows up. It's like, what if you don't make it? I better hedge my bets, and maybe I'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or I'll be present only sometimes when it's pleasant or not other times, or something like this. But instead is pointing to this gentle persistence at the end, with this emphasis on gentle, making these 7 factors, making some confidence or conviction part of the companions on this path, rather than something we're supposed to do, rather than something that we're supposed to do to make ourselves better or somehow fix something. What would it be like to just have these companions on our path? In the same way that we make friends with the mind, make friends with the present moment, what would it be like to be friendly with the 7 factors of awakening, to invite them in as companions? So these 3 poems, some of you might have heard of them, some of you not perhaps, are by Matty Weingast. Last name is spelled Weingast, Matty Weingast. And these are poems that are collected in this book that's called The First Free Women, Poems of the Early Buddhist Nuns. And these are Matty's interpretation of some awakening poems of some women. And they're really beautiful. I love them. They bring in a certain amount of whimsy. They bring in something that seems so relevant in the way of describing practice in a, I don't know, coming from a different angle instead of this is what we should do or something heavy, but instead, kind of, I'll say for me, it just makes my heart sing in some kind of way. And I feels like there's some openness and ease, a real invitation to bring this singing, this openness, this ease to our practice. So this week we'll be exploring different poems, but maybe point to practice, but in a different way, in a way that hopefully is a way that maybe nourishes and warms the heart, and then allows kind of like an invitation to all aspects of ourselves, including the inner critic. They're invited to, and bring this wholeheartedness to our practice. So thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow.